Activate Your Brain by Scott G. Halford, read by Avicenna. 1. The Science of Being Successfully You. Chapter 1. Our Three Brains. Business strategists Will McFarland once said something that resonated deeply with me. Our success at work used to demean that we understand business acumen. That's not enough anymore. Going forward, the leaders and successful business people of the world will also have an understanding of how to manage their biology. That will make the difference. All of us innately understand that our success ultimately relies on the 3-pound gelatinous, grayish white blob in our head, but too often we fail to see just how much biology matters in the output of our lives. But the more we know about our biology, the more in control we can be, which is why we are starting with this chapter. A brief primer on the master of human biology, the brain. 90% of what we know about the brain we have learned in the past 20 years, and we still have only nicked the surface. The human brain is such a complex and wonderful thing that it's unlikely we will fully understand it in our lifetime. Indeed, the science is currently being amended, altered, and in some cases out and out change. Some neuroscientists devote their entire careers to researching a square millimeter slice of the brain, research that will keep them busy into their old age. Our overall success in the world is reliant upon our ability to manage the constant dance between two of the three brains we possess, the human brain and the mammalian brain. The third and the oldest brain, the reptilian brain, operates without our assistance. Those who effectively manage those first two brains, the human and the mammalian, are more likely to achieve what they want. This is the foundation for making the types of choices that can change operation of these three basic brains. In the next chapter, we will explore the chemical messaging and what we can do to influence it. In the final chapter of this section, we will work to understand how our environments affect those messages and what that means for the choices we make. And now your brains await your acquaintances. Reptile, mammal, and human. Interpersonal neurobiologist Dr. Daniel Siegel uses an easy hand model to teach the basic anatomy of the brain. I will walk you through it below because it's great for understanding the relationship between the three brains, but you can go to the YouTube and watch Dr. Siegel demonstrate it yourself. Start by holding your hand in front of you with your palm facing you. Your arm represents the spinal cord that comes up into the brain, and the base of your hand is the base of the brain and includes the brainstem and other psychology that comprise our most ancient brain. And our aforementioned reptilian brain, it operates in the functions we don't think about, like respiration, perspiration, salivation, and any other decisions that are automatic and autonomy. The reptilian brain automates every moment of our life and really does not care how we feel about it. And now we fold your thumb to the middle of your palm and creating the number 4. In our model, the thumb represents a big group of structures known as the limbic system. This is the heart of the mammalian brain. Among the many things the limbic system does, it detects what is most important in our environment. If something is dangerous, it puts that on top for us to deal with it right away. It also notices dangers, opposite, reward, and can all help us connect to the highly positive element of the environment. Like the reptilian brain, it is on 24/7 scanning the environment constantly to make sure we sense a threat and notice when something feels good too. The mammalian brain's architecture also facilitates memories and alerts us to pay attention and focus. The amygdala in each hemisphere of the brain are part of the limbic system too. They serve as our chief relevance detecting devices, and this little almond-shaped structure detects the things that are novel, surprising, rewarding, and threatening. To name a few, snakes and spiders and dangerous things are always going to be relevant, but are so food and meats and smiling face, given the right context. What do untrustworthy and trustworthy faces have in common? And they both represent people we need to be looking out for, people that might be motivationally relevant at some point, whether it's to run away from them or to affiliate with them. In essence, our amygdala are facilitating a shift in our attention to things that are important to both of our well-being and our survival. The mammalian brain has been described as the emotional center of the brain. It is not logical, and left it to its own devices, it would cause us to act like an undisciplined 3-year-old. Fortunately, if conditions are right, the mammalian brain has an overseer, the third brain. The third brain, the human brain, is the captain of the ship. To complete our hand model, curl your 4 fingers over your thumb. Looks like a brain of human, right? Yeah, that's a neocortex engulfing the mammalian brain. It's what separates us from our animal cousins in extraordinary ways. What's the difference between humans and our closest animal relative, the chimpanzee? Although there is only a tiny genetic difference, we share 96.8% of our DNA. In our prefrontal cortex, the part of the neocortex right behind our forehead, are very different. The prefrontal cortex, PVC, is the executive center of the brain, and it's the essence of the third brain. I think recent analyzes, innovates, and manages the emotion that rise from the mammal part of the brain. In other words, it makes us instinctively human. This is the part of our brain that enables us to create everything in the world that is not natural. The book you're reading, or the audiobook you are listening right now, your clothes, your bed, everything we invent is conceived of in human PVC. Our cousins closer in prefrontal cortex volume, chimpanzees, have smaller overall volume in their PVC than humans, but not by much. Still, they cannot come close to what humans have constructed. In fact, there is no other piece on the planet that can do what we can do. The reason for this boils down to many things, but the size of the operation of the prefrontal cortex are among the biggest. That's why we must give it the respect and care it is due. The human and mammalian brains, the neocortex and limbic system, interact with each other during every moment of our life. The PVC allows us to take time to think about things. The slowing down allows us to have a more reasonable relationship with our emotions, and the interplay between these two brains is where we see the difference between business people who succeed and those who fail miserably. Many people make it into the great schools and get excellent jobs because they have technically smart and have high IQs, but they often derail because they never learn to have their human brain manage the mammalian brains. Eventually, the mammalian brain can destroy careers and relationships if we do not recognize how to bring the human brain online when we are feeling strongly about something, especially in times of crisis. How our mammalian and human brains work together. The emotions generated by our mammalian brain are messy, and they're not governed by logic. They bring an automatic social responses generated by what neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman calls the reflexive system or X system because of the X in the word reflexive. The brain structure involved in the X system include element of the limbic system as well as the component of the prefrontal cortex, as its name implies that this system reacts by reflex. If you hit it, it hits you back without thinking. The X system is also what makes us react emotionally to stimuli throughout the day, like those pesky emails or texts that cause us a pang of anxiety when they pop up. Yeah, in Lieberman's model, the X system is contrasted with the reflective system or C system. While the X system draws mainly on the limbic system, the prefrontal cortex is the primary structure involved in the system C system. The C system manages the X system into civility and appropriate choices left to its own devices. The X system would cause us to be aggressive and rude and messy when With a total jerk, the X system in us says, strangle the tweet. The C system says, career limiting move, maybe we should talk it out. Emotional intelligence, or EI, is the dance between the more rational C system and the emotional X system. EI is a set of non-cognitive attributes, and if we have high EI, our C system is effectively cooperating with D and regulating the X system. EI, emotional intelligence, allows individuals to navigate the day-to-day difficulty and obstacles of life, manage their own emotions, and bring about appropriate emotion in others, all in on an effort to be successful. In fact, it's a better predictor of individual workplace success and well-being in life than IQ and expertise. Activation. Think about a recent circumstance when you respond to a situation was not exactly what you intended. You might have been tired, under pressure, or overwhelmed by your workload. And reimagine the situation with your human brain, the PVC, the C system, running the interaction. What if you had taken just a few moments before responding to allow the human brain to take control? What would your response sound like this time? Activate your PVC by literally waiting for about 10 seconds before you respond. Take a few deep breaths and slow down, and when you respond immediately, you are likely operating out of your emotional brain first. That can be fraught with over intensity and inappropriate words, and your response regulated by your PVC will always be more successful. Avoid making big decisions when you are overly stressed or tired. That's when the emotional brain comes out to play, and you don't want the brain making important calls in your life. Some scientists estimate that we spend only about 2 to 10% of our waking hours in the C system and the rest in the X system, which means that most of our time is spent on the animal side of nature, reacting, responding out of impulse, defaulting to the negative, missing the positive, and that's somewhat understandable. The C system is much more energy intensive to operate, while instantaneously X system reactions are less expensive to operate. In short, most of us have to work to improve our emotional intelligence. We have to decide to spend on the energy. Here is where we have an opportunity. Imagine if, throughout awareness and new choices, we could increase the time to spend in the human brain by just 1 or 2%. And look at what has been created in the world when the human part of the brain has been engaged. Even for just short spurts, we have some incredible goals to shout out for as humans, and the activities in this book are aimed to get us in that system more of the time. Chapter 2. Maximize your moment through your neurochemistry. Visualize the difference between a day when you are at the top of your game and a day when you even the slightest nuisance sends you into a tizzy. On some days, everything falls into place no matter what we world throw our way. They are scats of emails to answer, a looming deadline, phone call from home, curveball from the boss, but we perform well, maybe even exceptionally well. It's like we are in a kickboxing match with the demons of everyday life, and we are live and fit and winning. It's exhausting. That is a good kind of exhausting. We may even feel energized at the same time. Then tomorrow comes and it is completely different. Even the simple stuff is a struggle. Why do we have these down days? Even when we are facing the same circumstances that we excelled in yesterday. The neurochemistry of the brain has the power to alter our behavior, mood, and perspective on the same set of circumstances from day to day. In a nutshell, neurochemistry is the complicated balance of chemicals in our brain and that affect how each brain structure functions and how the part of the brain interact and how the brain as a whole guides our behavior and responses. Neurochemistry is determined in part by our perceptions of a situation. Whether we see it as a threat or something that will help us thrive. On one of those bad days, mundane challenges like deadlines, emails, interruption can build up and be perceived as a big threat by the brain. We then act accordingly to protect ourselves from this threat, and we can move from a positive outlook to this negative, reflexive protective one very quickly. In one moment you are humming along, but then the boss calls and puts your entire alarm system into overload without some intervention on your part. The mammalian brain takes over and you begin to tumble down here. Currently, we don't entirely understand the new chemical changes we experience from day to day. The potential outward causes are many, and you may have received bad news, slept badly, had an argument, eaten something disagreeable, but we do understand the basic of neurochemistry, and developing the awareness for yourself is a good place to start retaking control of your life. With some insight, it's possible to do something about those neurochemical shifts, to lift yourself into a better state of mind and perhaps be compassionate with yourself when you need a little soft-cuddling. When a good friend of mine went through the death of his 15-year-old dog, he admitted feeling ridiculous for feeling so intensely sad about, and he wanted to brush it off and get right back to work because it was just a dog. There was so much wrong with that statement. Dog lovers know this, but even more of killer is the notion that we cannot give ourselves a break when something important in our life happens, regardless of what the outside world might think of how we feel about it. If you are sad, you are sad. We have a better chance of rebalancing our neurochemistry quickly if we take time to be nicer to ourselves and when we are going through tough things. Yeah, even positive stress requires some self-care. My family helped me cuddle myself when I was about to receive a big award. It was an immensely positive thing, but I was becoming overwhelmed by the magnitude of receiving in front of 1,500 people. They helped me to slow down, take in a moment, and cherish the wonderful time in my life. What follows in this chapter is a basic discussion of the physiology of emotion and behavior. Once you possess this information, you will have more of a say in the neurochemical changes that take place in your brain and the feelings that result. You will be able to better influence whether you will experience the good day or the bad one, and you will make your life a little sweeter in the process. Neurochemicals and our moods and behavior. The first thing to know about neurochemistry of the brain is that it's not an all or nothing proposition. For normal function, we need appropriate levels of all of our various neurochemicals. It's a Goldilocks effect applied to the brain. We need not too much of any neurochemical, not too little of any other, but just the right amount of all of them. Any one chemical in amounts too small or great can lead to disease and even death. Many extreme neurochemical dysfunction are out of control, but we can influence many of the side neurochemical fluctuations that happen from situation to the situation by what we think, what we eat, what we drink, and what we do. It is important to note that every one of the neurochemical is implicated in both positive and negative stress. We will focus on them in the manifestation of their most well-known behavioral effect. On the figure 1, maps the primary neurochemical and hormones involved in positive and negative feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. On the y-axis is adrenaline, which puts us in a state of high or low arousal or alert. In the right quadrants, we have cortisol, which is associated with stress, and in the left quadrants, we have the chemical associated with more positive feeling, the catecholamines and oxytocin. As you can see, combination of the higher and lower amount of certain neurochemical create a different state of mind. We can be in so many states of mind in one day that it's mind-boggling. While it's a helpful starting point to see these emotions and states of mind in its quadrants, we are much more complex than that. For instance, you have surely experienced something bittersweet in your life. A corporate client of mine was telling me about the time when she was elevated to a position that she had long wanted, but as a result, one of the favorite colleagues had to leave the company. There was not room for them both. And this woman experienced something quintessentially human, feeling elated, deflated, in nearly the same breath. Sometimes those intense emotions come barreling down on us, and we don't feel like we can do anything about them. Regardless of what we experience, we do have a choice as to which of the four quadrants we spend most of our time in, and the more we can understand whether we are energized or not, feeling bad or good, the more we can take steps to be in our quadrant of choice. The vast majority of the strategies and gut lessons of the rest of the book will hinge on your understanding of which quadrant you are in. Whether you choose to be there, whether it's serving your purpose, and what about to do if you want or need change quadrants. First, let's take a brief look at how neurochemicals do their job. The chemistry of threat and focus. The brain's chief organizing principle, according to integrative neuroscientist Evian Gordon, is to maximize reward and minimize danger. Fortunately and unfortunately, much more architecture in our brain is devoted to danger and threat detection than to reward detections. We need this danger detecting brain part. How else would all our ancestors have survived all of the poisonous snakes, lethal plants, and other threats on the planet? And the brain manages threat by releasing two main chemicals, adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline is our fight, flight, freeze hormone. High levels of it put us in a high arousal state. Low levels or a lack of it put us in a low arousal state. When we perceive a threat, our adrenaline shoots up to put us into high alert, and glucose spills into our bloodstream to give us energy. Being as high arousal can lead to intense feelings, both positive and negative. High arousal is good for things like giving presentation, staying awake in the meeting, competing in sports, and so on. And low arousal is good for meditation, thinking through a spreadsheet, analyzing business plan, or explaining algebra to a frustrated child. The hormones cortisol and adrenaline come into play when our brain detects that we need to be highly focused and alert, perhaps to avoid an imminent threat, and cortisol is commonly thought of as the stress hormone. As with most aspects of the brain, there is an upside and downside to cortisol. We will get to the downside shortly, but let's look at the upside first. Cortisol keeps us in the game. It keeps us awake and help with alertness and focus, and cortisol gets us off the couch. It gives us a little bit of the edginess that researchers have discovered is just right for performance. Some stress hormone is essential for performing well in high-pressure situations that require quick responses to changes in the environment. Practicing the responses you want to use in a high-stress situation is the key because cortisol goes looking for the thickest pathways to fulfill what is needed to survive the moment. Think about an athlete on the field during competition, and cortisol focuses on the athlete and allows access to the behavior practice over and over again so that in the game he will be able to display the practice skill with the greater ease. This is why professionals practice the same basic skill repeatedly. A colleague of mine, let's call her Melissa, once consulted with a client because things had gotten really written in the company. Melissa sat in an executive level meeting with the CEO and his direct report and found herself stunned. The energy in the room could not have been less urgent or any more lackadaisical. There was a distinct lack of focus and arousal that should have been present in the room given the situation, even though these high-level employees' alarm systems should have been going off and focusing on generating solutions. Melissa knows that when a business is being threatened by extinction, its employees had better be generating some energy and direction to get it on the track again. Unfortunately, Melissa couldn't get these teams to see that. Their perspective on losing major client failed to get their brains to react to the very real threat of losing important business. As of this writing, the 3 of other clients have jumped ship. So, the fact that cortisol helps us focus on the perform when we are facing a challenge is a good part, but we cannot allow too much of the stress hormone to keep us from enjoying the pleasant stuff of life. We have to get just right be the right balance of cortisol in our system for our best effectiveness, and too little and we might not have it to kick in the pants. We need to be competitive or to narrow our focus, but too much in our performance can suffer, crippling us with a disorganized mind, anxiety, panic, and even paralysis. Our modern brain is not all that different today from what it was thousands of years ago, but what we perceive as danger is so very different, and that often leads to many of us living in a pool of too much cortisol. Today, most of us are able to protect ourselves from nasty bees and poisonous snakes. The dangers are now of a different type: unmet expectations, missed deadlines, fear of looking stupid, a lack of confidence, airline upgrades given to someone else, and the list goes on for thousands and thousands of entries. Left unchecked, this daily abundance of stressor is bad for our brains and our bodies. Decay and disease can be the result. Here are many of the ailments in which chronic levels of cortisol are implicated: the onset and progression of cancer, the progression of autoimmune disease such as arthritis, AIDS, lupus, immune system deficiency, the progression of multiple sclerosis and other neurodegenerative disease, high cortisol level, hypertension, premature aging, including wrinkles, skin graying, hair, brain shrinking, memory loss, and onset of diabetes. Negative emotions. When adrenaline and cortisol combine, as you see in the graph, the two quadrants on the right, 3 and 4, are the ones that contain negative emotions. There are three basic negative emotions: anger, fear, and sadness. Unfortunately, I get all of them. And all the other negative emotions found on the right side of the graph are very intensely level of those three. We see the intense form, rage, terror, and despair in the quadrant 4, where the combustible combination of high arousal and high cortisol is present. The less intense form of the three negative emotions, including resentment, frustration, vigilance, apprehension, and boredom, are found in quadrant 3. We slide into the quadrant 3 when our thoughts become negative. Think of things that generally irritate you: unproductive meetings, emails admonishing you to do something with 25 people, a copy, someone popping into chat while you are right in the middle of a complex spreadsheet, or the person at the checkout lane who still writes checks. This is the place many of us find ourselves as the day wears on and we become more tired. We get crankier, more emotional in our behaviors, and often de-energized. Unfortunately, after a very long, tiring day filled with many irritants, when we get home, we may find ourselves in this quadrant. The intense negative emotion of the quadrant 4 are usually big bursts of the feeling and don't usually last for very long. Think about a moment in your life when you got big bad news or you were in a very bad circumstance. This could be the moment you found out you were overlooked for the job you wanted, finding out that a prospective client went with a competitor when you absolutely knew you had it in the bag. It could be hearing bad news about your health. It could be the moment before you plunge into a bungee jump, or when someone nearly sideswipes you by cutting you off in traffic. Fortunately, we usually don't spend long in quadrant 4, but waiting and breathing before responding, we can manage the neurochemical levels downward to at least get to its less intense brother, quadrant 3. Cortisol and adrenaline interact in numerous ways to put us in quadrant 3 or 4. They make perceived danger appear closer than they actually are, including looming deadlines. Our brain literally magnifies the negative, and so we get crankier, more intense, and when it is stimulated, cortisol also narrows our attention so that we pay heed to what is most relevant in the environment. But the focus may be so narrow that we miss other pieces of the environment when the intensity is high. In other words, the combination of cortisol and adrenaline can cloud our thinking when we need it most. Ever had a brain freeze during a presentation? It's likely because your levels were so high. That is an unfortunate consequence of chronic stressors. Our brain gets hijacked, blocked from doing its work, especially when it's requires reason and logic, by the intense neurochemical arrival of negative emotions. It even happened during positive events. I received an award in front of 1,500 people in 2014. Although it was an amazing and exciting moment in my life, I literally cannot remember what the audience sounded like when my name was announced. I don't remember the faces of my family and friends who were on their feet with their other 1,500 in the thunderous applause. So I'm told. I don't remember much of anything except trying to stay focused enough to remember a 6-minute substance speech I needed to give. And still, our emotions are not as out of control as it may seem. One person can experience a major setback and crumble or become enraged, while another goes through the same event, bounce back quickly from their negative state, move forward, and sometimes even flourishes. And think about the influences on our emotion and on behavior, like the primary colors at a paint store. The clerk pulls the paint levels to add a little while. A little black, a little white, yeah, a little this and that to come up with any of 16 million different colors. The environment is one of those levers, and we usually cannot control how much good or bad it gives us at any given moment. The lever we do have control over is our appraisal, our perception of the event, and the internal conversation we have about it. If you give heavy sides and feel frustrated when things go badly at work, if your appraisal of the situation is that there is absolutely nothing you can do about it, you will likely have gotten 3 or 4 emotional responses. However, if you use your internal conversation to explore how you are feeling and what you can do to improve the situation or lessen its negative impact, you are more likely to find yourself moving forward toward the positive emotions of the quadrant 1 and 2. When we live most of our lives in quadrant 3 and 4, we start getting used to our current state, a process known as habituation. We get used to banging our head against the wall and we no longer feel the pain, much less the concussions that will happen very soon. However, the brain likes nothing more than to get back to homeostasis, the stable, normal, and pressure state it wants to be in all day long. It's sending us signals to help us get back to normal. If we can pause and assess, we can move toward the process positive and our brain will help us once we start. Let's try an activation to begin the trip over to the more positive emotions. Activation. Next time you feel an intense negative emotion, wait 10 seconds before responding and think about a situation that sets you off at work or at home. Is the situation worth the negative emotion it makes you feel? Ask yourself, is this really worth getting worked up over? And think about how your emotion would have you respond to that situation. Would you write a rude email? Would you say something hurtful? What would have been the other person's response to your behavior? And would they have fired off another rude email back to you? Or said something hurtful to you in response? And go ahead and write your next email, or write what you might have said on a piece of paper. Walk away from it for a bit and reread it and imagine how it would have been received. Would you have come out as the winner? And now take some time to reword it less negatively. Wait another few minutes, then reread and reword it if necessary, and then send your email or talk to the other person. And use this process for all emotional laden communication. It will save you in so many ways. If you feel an amygdala hijacking beginning, take a walk, even if you only have a few seconds. If you are in a meeting, excuse yourself to go in the bedroom or make up some other excuse. It will be worth to minor embarrassment to save yourself from responding in a way that could hurt a business relationship. We can't and don't want to be devoid of negative emotions. They alert us when something is wrong in the environment and help us survive. Our goal is not to never be in a quadrant 3 or 4. It's to be more aware when we are there and work to get out, rather than wallowing in their neurochemical